We live in a world of constant flux, where our perceptions shape our reality and our thoughts define our experiences. But what happens when we challenge these perceptions? When we turn our thoughts inside out and examine them from angles we've never considered before? This, my friends, is the essence of reverse thinking, and it's a powerful tool for expanding our consciousness and unlocking new realms of understanding. Today, we're going to explore 8 mind-bending stories that illustrate the profound impact of reverse thinking. These aren't just anecdotes, they're gateways to a new way of perceiving the world around us and our place within it. As we navigate through these narratives, I want you to pay close attention to how they make you feel, how they challenge your existing beliefs, and most importantly, how they might reshape your understanding of reality itself. Let's begin with our first story. Imagine a successful businessman at the peak of his career suddenly deciding to give away all his wealth and live as a homeless person. On the surface, this seems like madness, doesn't it? We're conditioned to believe that success equals accumulation of wealth, of status, of possessions. But what if true success lies in the opposite direction?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This is the story of John Doe, a Wall Street executive who, after a near-death experience, realized that his pursuit of wealth had left him spiritually bankrupt. He made the radical decision to give away everything he owned and live on the streets. Now, I'm not suggesting we should all become homeless. The point here is to challenge our assumptions about what constitutes a meaningful life. John discovered that by stripping away all material possessions, he was forced to confront his true self. He found a sense of freedom and purpose that had eluded him in his previous life of luxury. He learned to appreciate the simple things: a warm meal, a kind word, the beauty of a sunrise, and in doing so, he found a richness of experience that no amount of money could buy. This story forces us to question our societal values. We're taught from a young age that success is measured by our bank balance, our job title, the size of our house. But what if we've got it all backwards? What if true success lies in our ability to find contentment and meaning regardless of our material circumstances? Now, I'm not advocating for poverty as a path to enlightenment. That would be an oversimplification. What I am suggesting is that we need to critically examine our relationship with material possessions and societal definitions of success. Are we pursuing these things because they truly bring us fulfillment, or because we've been conditioned to believe that they should? This leads us to our second story, which challenges another deeply ingrained belief: the idea that education is the key to success. We've all heard this mantra repeated countless times: stay in school, get good grades, go to college, and you'll be set for life. But what if this conventional wisdom is holding us back? Consider the story of Sarah, a high school dropout who went on to build a multi-million-dollar tech company. Sarah struggled in the traditional education system. She was creative, entrepreneurial, and had a unique way of looking at problems. But these qualities weren't valued in her school environment, which prioritized rote memorization and standardized testing. So Sarah made the controversial decision to drop out. She taught herself coding, started freelancing, and eventually founded her own company. Her success wasn't in spite of her lack of formal education, it was because of it. By freeing herself from the constraints of traditional schooling, she was able to pursue her passions and develop her skills in a way that suited her unique learning style. Now, before you accuse me of advocating for mass dropouts, let me be clear: education is valuable. But we need to expand our definition of what constitutes a worthwhile education. The traditional one-size-fits-all approach is failing many of our brightest minds. We need to recognize that there are many paths to knowledge and success, and that sometimes the most valuable learning happens outside the classroom. This story challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about intelligence and success. Are we limiting ourselves and our children by adhering too rigidly to traditional educational paths? How can we create learning environments that nurture creativity, innovation, and individual strengths? Our third story takes us into the realm of relationships and challenges our notions of love and commitment. We're all familiar with the classic romantic narrative. Two people meet, fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after. But what if the path to a truly fulfilling relationship is the exact opposite of what we've been taught? Meet Tom and Lisa, a couple who decided to get divorced in order to save their marriage. They had been together for 15 years, and while they still loved each other, their relationship had become stagnant. They felt trapped by the expectations and routines they had built over the years. So they made the radical decision to legally separate. They moved into separate homes, started dating other people, and essentially reset their relationship to zero. And something remarkable happened. Free from the pressures and expectations of marriage, they rediscovered why they fell in love in the first place. They started dating each other again, courting and wooing as if they were new lovers. 2 years later, they remarried, but this time with a completely different perspective on their relationship. They had learned that love isn't about possession or control, but about freedom and choice. They choose each other every day, not because of a legal contract or societal expectations, but because they genuinely want to be together. This story forces us to question our assumptions about relationships. We're taught that commitment means staying together no matter what, that marriage is the ultimate goal of a relationship. But what if true commitment means being willing to let go? What if the healthiest relationships are those where both partners are free to leave at any time, but choose to stay? It's a confronting idea, isn't it? It challenges our need for security, our fear of abandonment. But consider this. If you knew your partner was with you purely by choice, not out of obligation or habit, wouldn't that be more meaningful? Wouldn't it push you to continually nurture and invest in your relationship? This leads us to our fourth story, which challenges our understanding of success and failure. We've been conditioned to see failure as something to be avoided at all costs. Success is the goal, and anything less is unacceptable. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if failure is actually the key to success? Consider the story of James Dyson, the inventor of the Dyson vacuum cleaner. Dyson didn't create his revolutionary product overnight. In fact, he failed 5,126 times before he finally got it right. That's not a typo. Over 5,000 failed prototypes before he achieved success. Most people would have given up long before reaching that point. But Dyson saw each failure as a step closer to success. He understood that failure wasn't the opposite of success. It was an integral part of the process. Each failed prototype taught him something new, helped him refine his ideas, brought him one step closer to his goal. This story challenges us to radically reframe our relationship with failure. What if, instead of fearing failure, we embraced it? What if we saw each setback not as a reflection of our worth or abilities, but as valuable data that can inform our next attempt? This mindset shift can be transformative. When we stop fearing failure, we become more willing to take risks, to try new things, to push ourselves beyond our comfort zones. And it's in these spaces, beyond what we know and are comfortable with, that true growth and innovation occur. But it's not just about individual success. This reverse thinking about failure has profound implications for our society as a whole. Imagine if we created educational systems that celebrated failure as a learning opportunity rather than punishing it. Imagine workplaces where employees felt safe to take risks and make mistakes. The potential for innovation and progress would be enormous. As we conclude this first part of our exploration, I want you to reflect on these 4 stories. How have they challenged your existing beliefs? What assumptions about success, education, relationships, and failure have you been carrying that might be limiting your growth and happiness? Remember, the goal here isn't to completely discard all conventional wisdom. It's to develop the ability to question it, to look at things from multiple angles, to consider possibilities that might at first seem counterintuitive or even absurd. This is the essence of reverse thinking, and it's a powerful tool for expanding our consciousness and unlocking new realms of understanding. As we venture further into the labyrinth of reverse thinking, we must prepare ourselves for even more profound challenges to our established worldviews. The stories we're about to explore will push us to the very edge of our understanding, forcing us to confront the paradoxes that lie at the heart of human existence. Our 5th story revolves around the counterintuitive nature of happiness. We're all seeking happiness, aren't we? It's the driving force behind so many of our actions and decisions. But what if the very pursuit of happiness is what's making us miserable? Consider the case of Alex, a young professional who had dedicated his life to the pursuit of happiness. He read all the self-help books, attended seminars, practiced meditation and positive thinking. He did everything right according to conventional wisdom. And yet, he found himself more anxious and dissatisfied than ever. It was only when Alex stopped trying to be happy that he finally found contentment. He realized that his constant striving for happiness was actually a source of stress and disappointment. By always focusing on some future state of happiness, he was missing out on the present moment. Alex's story illustrates a profound truth. Happiness isn't something to be pursued or achieved. It's a byproduct of living a meaningful life, of engaging fully with the world around us, of accepting both the joys and sorrows that come with being human. This is a radical shift in thinking for many of us. We're bombarded with messages telling us that if we just try hard enough, if we just find the right technique or buy the right product, we'll achieve lasting happiness. But what if true happiness comes from letting go of the pursuit altogether? Think about it. When are you most happy? Is it when you're consciously trying to be happy, or when you're fully absorbed in an activity, when you're connecting with others, when you're working towards something larger than yourself? Happiness, paradoxically, often comes when we're not seeking it at all. This doesn't mean we should aim for misery, of course, but perhaps we need to shift our focus from pursuing happiness to pursuing meaning. When we engage in activities that align with our values, when we contribute to something larger than ourselves, we often find that happiness naturally follows. Our 6th story challenges our understanding of morality and ethics. We tend to think of morality in black and white terms. There are good actions and bad actions, right choices and wrong choices. But what if the most ethical path sometimes requires us to do things that seem, on the surface, to be wrong? This is the dilemma faced by Dr. Smith, a physician working in a war-torn country. Dr. Smith was confronted with a terrible choice: lie to armed militants about the whereabouts of his patients, or tell the truth and condemn innocent people to likely death. In this situation, the conventional moral framework breaks down. Lying is generally considered wrong, but so is allowing harm to come to innocent people. Dr. Smith chose to lie, protecting his patients but compromising his commitment to honesty. This story forces us to confront the complexities of real-world ethics. It's easy to adhere to moral absolutes when we're dealing with hypothetical situations or simple choices. But in the messy reality of human existence, we often find ourselves in situations where there is no clear right answer. What Dr. Smith's story teaches us is that true morality requires more than just following a set of predetermined rules. It requires wisdom, empathy, and the ability to weigh complex factors in difficult situations. Sometimes, paradoxically, the most ethical choice might be one that violates our surface-level understanding of right and wrong. This doesn't mean that all morality is relative or that we should discard our ethical principles. But it does suggest that we need a more nuanced, flexible approach to ethics. We need to be willing to grapple with moral ambiguity and to make difficult choices based on a deeper understanding of right and wrong. Our seventh story challenges our notions of identity and self. We tend to think of ourselves as fixed, stable entities. I am who I am, you are who you are. But what if our sense of self is far more fluid and malleable than we realize? Meet Maria, a woman who underwent a radical personality change after a brain injury. Before the accident, Maria was introverted, conservative, and risk-averse. After recovering from her injury, she became outgoing, liberal, and adventurous. Her friends and family said it was like she had become a completely different person. Maria's story raises profound questions about the nature of identity. If a change in our brain chemistry can so drastically alter our personality, our beliefs, our very way of being in the world, then what does that say about who we really are? This is not just a philosophical question. It has real-world implications for how we think about personal growth, mental health, and even criminal justice. If our self is not fixed but constantly in flux, then perhaps we have more power to change than we realize. But this malleability of self is also terrifying. It challenges our sense of continuity, our belief in a core, unchanging me. If I can change so fundamentally, am I still the same person? What parts of me are essential, and what parts are accidental? These questions lead us to a paradoxical truth. Perhaps the only constant in our identity is change itself. We are not fixed entities, but processes, constantly evolving, adapting, becoming. And in this constant becoming, we find our true nature. This brings us to our eighth and final story, which challenges our very perception of reality. We tend to think of reality as something objective, existing independently of our perception. But what if the act of observation itself shapes reality? This is the puzzle at the heart of quantum mechanics, illustrated by the famous double-slit experiment. Without delving too deeply into the physics, this experiment suggests that particles behave differently when they're being observed versus when they're not. It's as if the very act of measurement changes the nature of reality. Now, you might be thinking, what does quantum mechanics have to do with my everyday life? But consider the implications. If our observation can influence the behavior of subatomic particles, what might our perceptions be doing to the world around us on a larger scale? This is not to suggest that we can change reality simply by wishing it to be different, but it does raise profound questions about the nature of reality and our role in shaping it. Are we passive observers of an objective world or active participants in creating our reality? This perspective can be both empowering and humbling. On one hand, it suggests that we have more influence over our reality than we might have thought. Our beliefs, our expectations, our focus, all of these might be shaping the world we experience in ways we don't fully understand. On the other hand, it reminds us of the limitations of our perception. If our very act of observation changes what we're observing, can we ever truly know the nature of reality? Or are we always, in some sense, creating the world as we perceive it? As we conclude this exploration of reverse thinking, I want you to sit with these ideas for a moment. How do they change your understanding of happiness, morality, identity, and reality itself? What possibilities do they open up? What certainties do they challenge? The goal of this exercise in reverse thinking is not to provide definitive answers, but to open up new questions. It's about developing the mental flexibility to consider multiple perspectives, to challenge our assumptions, to think beyond the boundaries of conventional wisdom. In a world that often pushes us towards simplistic, black-and-white thinking, this ability to engage with complexity and paradox is more important than ever. It's the key to personal growth, to innovation, to navigating the increasingly complex challenges of our modern world. So I challenge you. Don't just listen to these stories and nod in agreement. Take these ideas out into the world. Apply them to your own life. Look for opportunities to flip your thinking, to consider the opposite of what you believe to be true. You might be surprised at what you discover. Remember, the most profound truths often lie not in one extreme or the other, but in the tension between opposites. It's in the space between contradictions that true wisdom emerges. And it's through grappling with these paradoxes that we expand our consciousness and unlock new realms of understanding.